1 in 20 men in the United States of America molest children. In a population of 240 million adults, that translates into 6 million men who are molesting children, and there are 3 million children being molested as we speak. That's 2 million girls and 1 million boys. The biggest problem in this issue is denial by women. Women have a very difficult time coming to terms with the concept that 1 in 20 of the men they know is a child molester. It's usually the husband, the lover, the stepfather, but it is 1 in 20 men across the board. It does not matter what their financial status is, what their occupation is. People have an illusion this is people that live under bridges. It could be your dentist, your doctor, a policeman, your next door neighbor, but it is 1 in 20 men across the board. This is a situation that every politician has ignored since time began. If you just go through your day and count to 20, it's mind-boggling. By the time you've crossed paths with the 20th man, there's a 100% chance that you have crossed paths with a child molester. As a candidate for the governor of New Mexico, that translates to 42,000 men are molesting 14,000 girls and 7,000 boys. We can't ignore that issue. This is not fair to these children to let them go through their own personal sexual holocaust because we're too lazy or too cowardly or because the issue is just too big and too confusing. They deserve better than that. Again, I want to talk about denial. That is the issue. Women have got to come out of their denial. They've been culturally programmed by our religions, by our male-controlled governments, to turn their head, close their eyes, pretend it's not true. They don't have the right to speak up. There will be no resources from the government to help them. We have to get over that. We can't let this happen to these children. So one little point I'd like to point out, 1/6 of the adult population in America was molested as a child. 39 million people in America were molested as children. They are now adults. When you add that to the 3 million children that are being molested right now, over 1/8 of this country's population was sexually molested as a child. I'm not willing to ignore that. President Teddy Roosevelt one time said, "It's not the cynic that counts, it's the person that dares to fail greatly." I'm more than willing to fail greatly on this subject. I'm not willing to ignore it and pretend it's not there, that it's too complicated. It doesn't matter how complicated it is. When the ship's sinking, you do what you do to save people. So that's it. It's America's biggest, ugliest, dirtiest secret they've been keeping since time began, and we need to stop doing that. As far as solutions go, there's an organization that's a nationwide organization. It's a nonprofit. It is called Impact Personal Safety. They have a division in Santa Fe. As governor, I would make sure that Impact was taught starting in elementary schools at the kindergarten level, from kindergarten to 6th grade. Children need to be told they have a right to fight back, they have a right to scream, they have a right to complain, they have a right to resist what might be happening to them as an adult might be trying to seduce them. It's a self-defense program. Children need to learn that. There's a very successful program in Chicago run by the Archdiocese of Chicago. It's called Children Lures Program. It teaches children the kind of tricks a child molester would use to try to seduce them, earn their confidence, and then of course take advantage of them. It's standard operating procedure for a child molester to tell a child that they will kill them if they tell anybody. Once they get their confidence up and they start the process of the molesting, that child is terrified. So we have what's the equivalent of 3 million sex slaves in America. Children that are afraid they will be murdered if they say anything. So they live out their lives with this horror and the shame. Unacceptable. So anyone that has any kind of a program that empowers children to fight back, speak up, talk to their teacher, call the police, tell their parents, unless of course it's their father that's molesting them or their stepfather, but they have the right to approach adults and tell them what's going on. This kind of abuse creates psychotic splits in people. We can't just start bombarding kids with questions about whether they've been molested or not. It's a delicate issue. They have two parts of their personality many times when this happens, and so we have to find a way to integrate that, but by far the best thing is to make sure that it never happens. Of the 39 million adults that were molested as children, 13 million of them are men. That pretty much is our labor pool of child molesters. They do unto others as was done unto them as a child. They go and repeat that habit because it's just a blockage in their brain So we have to recognize that they're really just repeating a cycle. We're not talking about Adolf Hitler's, Osama bin Laden's. 93% of the men that molest children are religious, educated, and employed. You cannot tell, if you saw the faces of men that molest children, you'd be stunned. They look like your next door neighbors. They look like June and Ward Cleaver. So it's not like we can pick them out of a crowd. They look like you. They look like your neighbors, the people in your neighborhood, the people you work with. So it is delicate, but there are programs to empower children. One sad thing about this is that because 1 in 20 men do molest children, it means that 1 in 20 of our police forces are child molesters. So we have to immediately find a way to identify those molesters in the police department, get rid of them, and all of those men will be replaced by women officers who are trained in this issue, in psychology. They can be the ones that are participating in these programs. They can be the ones that are called on. We need a special unit in the police department that deals exclusively just with this issue, that specializes in this issue alone. That will be part of the plan. Every state in this union is broke. Corporate America has bankrupted us all. We're living off the crumbs that they've swept off their table. So we have to be creative and we have to be shrewd about this. One thing I don't think that people really deal with as a yoga teacher and meditation teacher is women's intuition. We have meditations that can increase women's intuition, and they should be the ones that who we're relying on. Most of our school teachers are women, and we need to rely on that base of people to be tuned in, to pay attention, to be noticing odd behavior from children, and find out what questions they need to ask to start determining what's happening. But again, I want to come back to this because it is the crux of the issue. Denial. Until women stop denying this, until they come to the terms of the fact that someone they trust with their children is a child molester, we can't stop this. The women have got to come out of the closet. They can't keep their head in the sand and pretend that it couldn't possibly be their husband or their lover or their brother or their uncle or their cousin or the church youth group leader or the babysitter. It could be any of those people. It's 1 in 20. I read something on Susana Martinez's website about putting drunk drivers behind bars where they belong. Again, a very macho, convenient statement to make. It does cost $40,000 per inmate per year to incarcerate someone. Okay, now at 42,000 child molesters in New Mexico times $40,000, you're talking about $1,700,000,000. We can't even get number 2 pencils and crayons into our schools. There is no way in God's green earth we can come up with the money to incarcerate 42,000 men. It's a fairy tale. So finding them is one of the things we have to do, but what to do with them once we find them, it makes this all the more complicated. It sounds kind of corny, but one of the solutions is we could build a child molesters city. Keep in mind, with 1 in 20 men being child molesters, it means that 1 in 20 electricians, plumbers, cement workers, bricklayers, you name it. With them being in jail, they could be building their own city that we could have guarded by the National Guard. We could keep them there, have them doing yoga and meditation, any kind of alternate healing modalities, and see if we can't maybe find a solution to this. Keeping in mind, 9 times out of 10, these men were molested as children, and they're stuck somewhere in their head. And if we can find a way to heal them, great. If we can't, they absolutely should not be registered sex offenders roaming our streets. That isn't acceptable. No woman should ever have to look over her shoulder, wonder if her children are safe on the streets. Every child should be able to ride their bike to the local convenience store and get a Coke if they want to. We should not be living in fear of these people, but we absolutely cannot live in denial of them. So even though I am running for governor, this is a campaign, and I'm trying to engage everybody's creative mind on this. What would we do if we could catch them? Incarceration's out of the question. So I'm going to go with the idea of a child molester city, and we'll take it from there. But I do have infinite faith in women that they will come up with this solution. So put on your thinking caps. We got 21,000 kids in New Mexico that are counting on us. We could be the role model for this nation. I sincerely believe that New Mexico could change the world, or any state, if they just decided to take this issue and do it correctly. Thank you.